I've been researching for this video for about 2 months. And to be clear, it wasn't at a hectic pace, but you know, it's been a long time. And I've been writing the video for about 1 month. I rewrote the introduction after it being set in stone for a month yesterday. I rewrote it all yesterday. It was this spiel about how I cannot be racist because, of course, I'm not a member of the white master race. The Morlocks from H.G. Wells' Time Machine, or maybe the Falmer from Skyrim. The joke is, of course, that whiteness is like a made-up moving target, like, you know, like look at like the actual like weird race, you call it racial theory? I don't know, it's like a pseudoscience. But like the weird Nazi hierarchy they built. Like what? It's a way that I like subtly squeezed into your mind the fact that this topic sort of hands me a piece of paper with modern racism written on it, and I just threw a dick on it and threw it into the fucking trash. So, you see, over the course of the past few months, instead of going to therapy, I've just been really into ancient Rome, particularly the late Republic and the early Empire. I've just been, like, consumed with it. And why? The reason that I've been so engrossed in it is that it's so filled with things that matter. Power, exploitation, justice, liberty, pride, sacrifice. It removes our modern arguments around power and exploitation, liberty, justice, loyalty, all the gay shit, and it places them within a new context. It is a context which provides breathing room, a welcome escape from the algorithmically driven fucking hate fuck arguments that everyone's always consumed with now. The past few months, this has happened to me like multiple occasions, like multiple times a fucking day.
Toxic masculinity is so 2017. It hasn't disappeared, of course, but in the years since #MeToo, many men have been trying to drop the stoicism and anger that has long warped masculinity. Some are seeking therapy, others have enrolled in workshops and men's groups in an effort to get in touch with their feelings and become better men. For better or waste no more time arguing what a good man should be. Be one.
Honestly, I think the internet rewarding these fucking constant, go-nowhere, hate-fuck arguments and think pieces, I think, for me at least, it's begun to catch up with it. I can't engage with it anymore. I really can't. I love dwelling on and reading about big ideas. Naturally, I mean, if you've watched my videos, you know this. But you cannot get me to think about or read about the nature of gender, masculinity, or race without holding a fucking gun to my head at this point. That's enough. That's enough. I am sorry. This has been a very long intro. I just think it's a bit important to, you know, just show how I'm feeling about I don't know. Whatever. But oh, it's taking a minute. There it is. Let's get started.
Why do we call the whole world's attention to the fact that we have no past? It's bad enough that the Romans were erecting great buildings when our forefathers were still living in mud huts. Now Himmler's starting to dig up these villages of mud huts and enthusing over every potsherd and stone axe he finds. All we prove by that is that we were still throwing stone hatchets and crouching around open fires when Greece and Rome had already reached the highest stage of culture. Adolf Hitler. Yeah! I imagine you wouldn't want your barbaric past brought back to life, would you? Look at Hitler here. Mustache. Fuck. Pants. The style of the barbaric. The style of the Celts and Germanic people. I think I speak for everyone when I say that Hitler would be much more fondly remembered if he shaved his fucking face and wore a toga like a goddamn man. Other content creators go easy on Hitler, but not me. I tell it like it is, and frankly, I'm not too fond of the guy. There are two intentional mistakes in this section. Number one, the word barbarian was used to refer to anyone that did not speak Latin. So, everybody, basically, except for these guys. And number two, I'm going to be referring to the Celtic people and Germanic people interchangeably. So here's the reason for this. When you, my contemporary audience, hear barbarian, you don't think of fucking Egyptians. You think of big, scary, savage Northern Europeans, or possibly Dave the Barbarian. So, these savage tribal Northern Europeans belong to one of two different groups as it pertained to the Romans. The Celtic tribes, which lived basically everywhere. There were even some in Turkey, which is just wild, but it's the most widespread European culture was Celtic. And number two, the Germanic people, which lived basically around there. This is... Denmark's in the wrong place, but who gives a shit? This is the Rhine River in Germany. As far as the Romans were concerned, the Celts were backwater savages, and the Germanic people were double backwater savages. The Celts were also considered drunkards, as their proximity to Rome led to them often trading with Roman merchants. They would trade one slave for one jug of wine. Now, the Germanic people did not do that, at least during the time of the Roman Republic, due to their distance from Rome. There is actually one Celtic tribe, the Belgae, who lived... Denmark being in the wrong place is really fucking me up now. There was one Celtic tribe named the Belgae, who lived in, well, roughly modern-day Belgium. They actually outlawed Roman wine because they believed it made men soft. Now that you've made it this far into the video, you might have noticed that I am white. Not as white as the rightful rulers of this world, the Morlocks and the Falmer, but still very white. My ancestry is British, Germanic, and Scandinavian. Scandinavia is the dick people, like they live in the dicks. But I know you're shocked by this news. I also thought that I was Nigerian, but it turns out that this whole time I have not had the N-word pass, and I've been acting as if I did. I am sorry, people that I offended. I've made a severe lapse in judgment. However, I do ask for some respect and distance to be given towards me in this difficult time, as my up-and-coming gangsta rap album, Ice Cream on the Side, has been cancelled. I burned 1,000 fucking CDs. So that's great, that's money down the drain. Now, the Roman perception of their northern neighbors was that they were war-mad. They were strong and savage, but lacked the discipline that the Roman legions had in spades. And the further away from Rome they were, the war-maddier they got. We'll take Ariovistus as an example, a Germanic king who Julius Caesar pimp-slapped back across the Rhine when he tried playing fuck-fuck games in Gaul. Before the battle, Caesar and Ariovistus met to negotiate, and this is what Caesar wrote of the encounter. Ariovistus said that no one had ever entered into a contest with Ariovistus without utter ruin to himself, that Caesar might enter the lists when he chose, he would feel what the invincible Germans, well trained beyond all others to arms, who for 14 years had not been beneath a roof, could achieve by their valor. Translation. Oh yeah? You're gonna fight us? You know what happened to everyone else that's fought us? Ask their widows, bitch! We're tough as fuck, dude. We sleep in the woods! Imagine bragging about not having roofs. What a flex. So to group basically everyone that lived here and just call them war-mad savages is, yes, a gross oversimplification. But, I mean, it's not entirely wrong. So what I want to discuss in this video is not just the stereotypes Romans had. I wanted to explain why they had these stereotypes, and I also want to explain how they acted on these stereotypes. There was a cultural, political, historical, and biological reason for Rome to have this attitude towards my ancestors, who, I don't know if they had the N-word pass. Cultural. Rome had access to the Mediterranean, on which lay some of the world's oldest civilizations. They were exposed to the cultures of Egypt, the Phoenicians, who gave them an alphabet, and, of course, Greece, among many, many others. This led to a not unwarranted sense of superiority. A Greek philosopher by the name of Posidonius lived with the Celtic tribes for a time. He saw how they lived. He ate at their table. They used the severed heads of enemies as trophies. Now, political. I will later discuss in greater detail how the best way to rise up the ranks of elected office in the Roman Republic was achieving military success. Naturally, big scary dudes who lived in mud huts, if they were feeling fancy, are a great punching bag for that purpose. They hit the two check marks. Number 1, formidable fighters, and number 2, culturally inferior. So if you do a genocide or whatever, who gives a shit? And historical. Around 390 BC, when Rome was not an empire, nor a Mediterranean power in any way whatsoever, their city was sacked by a group of Celtic tribesmen. And they just never got over it. What's important to note is that after the battle, the barbarians agreed to leave if they were given a certain amount of silver. So the silver started to get weighed out, and one of the Roman patricians, their aristocratic class, said, "Hold the fuck up. This scale is weighted in your favor. No way this is less than 30 talents of silver. This shit's rigged." Woe to the vanquished. What are you gonna do about it? And finally, biological. This is the shortest section by far. It turns out that Italians are short. This was a significant source of Roman fear when it came to the Celtic and Germanic people. They were all taller and stronger than the Romans, because the Romans sat around drinking wine and being short, I guess. At one point, during the Gallic Wars, which were the wars that Caesar was doing, the Romans were constructing a big siege tower, some distance from a Gallic fort. And the Gauls, they started heckling them. "Hey, how are you gonna move that big siege tower with them skinny-ass arms?" Oh, well, I'm glad you asked. The interior is actually hollow, so... Nerds! You're a bunch of short, little, skinny dorks! Did my ancestors have great art, achievements in architecture, science, literature, or even just fucking roofs? No. But they had banter, and that's all you need. The Roman perception of the Celtic and Germanic peoples was what you would expect. They saw them as massive barbarian meatheads who did not deserve mercy, and therefore did not receive any. They were a perpetual savage boogeyman who posed a persistent threat to Rome, at least in their heads, and therefore served a political and cultural purpose, which was backed by the history of Rome and the genetic reality that Italians sit in booster seats. They were often also regarded as superstitious, and therefore prone to illogical acts. Unlike the Romans, who were of course very logical, very factual and logical, they destroyed liberals on a daily basis. What they did was they would cut open an animal, and they'd stick their fucking hand in there, and they'd feel around a bit, and they could tell the future like that. Like, we can't do that today. That's really advanced. Lindo Man. Lindo Man is a bog body, which are bodies preserved by the peculiar environmental conditions in bogs. Now, Lindo Man was around 20 years old, lived between 120 BC to around 5 AD, and was a druid, which is to say, a religious priest. So what was his cause of death? I mean, that seems far more important than the fact that the dude was in his 20s, who gives a shit. His cause of death was ritualistic sacrifice. He was beaten in the head, strangled, and dumped in the bog. This is what passed for religion to my ancestors. The Romans didn't sacrifice humans. This is one of the things which they claimed gave them superiority over the barbarians. They absolutely did sacrifice humans. This is what Plutarch wrote of an occasion in which a Celtic tribe in Roman territory committed a human sacrifice. When the Romans learned that the people called Bletonici, a barbarian tribe, had sacrificed a man to the gods, why did they send for the tribal rulers with intent to punish them? But when it was made clear that they had done thus in accordance with a certain custom, why did the Romans set them at liberty but forbid the practice for the future? Yet they themselves, not many years before, had buried alive 2 men and 2 women, 2 of them Greeks, 2 Gauls, in the place called the Forum Boarium. It certainly seems strange that they themselves would do this, and yet rebuke barbarians on the ground that they were acting with impiety. We could go on and on about whether or not Romans treated the Celtic and Germanic peoples unfairly. But at the end of the day, this script was written in the Latin alphabet. Yes, Julius Caesar killed or enslaved 1/3 of the population of Gaul, which is modern-day France, Belgium, and Germany west of the Rhine. However, conversely, woe to the vanquished. Barbarian migrations had always been the stuff of Roman nightmares. Whenever wagons began rumbling across the north, the reverberations would echo far away in the Forum. The Republic had no fiercer boogeyman than the pale-skinned, horse-maned, towering Gaul. Hannibal might have ridden up to Rome's gates and flung his javelin over them, but he had never succeeded in capturing the seat of the Republic. They weren't fans. They didn't much care for them. We're gonna draw Europe. I did it from memory last time. I am bragging. But we're gonna... Enough of this fucking Lindo, man. Who gives a shit? Some dead priest. But he fucked goats. Goddamn. Fuck. I'm pretty goddamn good at this. Now, I'm not an artist. Man, if I was hungover, this would actually be like an actual history class. Carthage was originally a colony of the Phoenicians, an ancient Mediterranean civilization which invented... Incredible. The Phoenicians spread the alphabet through trade. It's changed a lot, naturally, but this evolved, thanks to the Romans, into the alphabet that we use today. This has given us the ability to share ideas and knowledge with each other, and pass down things through generations, and sexually proposition strangers in truck stop bathrooms. It's been invaluable to our civilization. Regardless, Carthage would grow to become the greatest power of the Mediterranean. As the centuries passed, they became the masters of commerce. To understand what happened to them, briefly, you must understand this. The word Punic can be used to describe one of 2 different things. It's an adjective. It could be used to describe, well, Carthaginians, because Punic meant that something was Phoenician, descended from Phoenicians, and of course the Phoenician language was called Punic. Punic as an adjective can also mean, however, treacherous. I would like you to call your craziest uncle and ask him what he thinks of the Jews. Do it. I fucking dare you. Great. Everything that your crazy uncle thinks about the Jews, that's what the Romans thought of the Carthaginians. So rich and sneaky and treacherous. We're talking about your crazy uncle here. The Romans prided both themselves and their state as a whole on military strength. Service was a key component to political and social advancement. Hence why Caesar did a fucking Holocaust in Gaul, then went on to become the most powerful man in the entire Republic's history. Romans saw themselves as morally superior as well. This is not uncommon. As far as cultures go, of course, they define themselves by a set of virtues, which they referred to as Via Romana. Chalk keeps breaking. Via Romana, the Roman way. These virtues were basically what you'd expect. Veritas, truthfulness, gravitas, importance, and so on. The key to success in Roman political life during the time of the Republic was not just having a famous family or rich benefactors, although it certainly did help. The path to success lay in exhibiting these virtues, being not just a great person, but a great Roman. Cicero, perhaps the most famed and successful senator of all time, came from a wealthy family from outside the city of Rome. Scandalous, I know. We never should have fucking trusted that guy. But he achieved great political success by still exhibiting these virtues and being an excellent orator and stopping the Catiline conspiracy. Did Cicero ever tell you that he stopped the Catiline conspiracy? Because he did. With God as his witness, he will fucking tell you that he stopped the Catiline conspiracy. Now, one of these virtues, which defined a good Roman, was virtus. Valor, martial skills, character, a high but earned sense of self-worth. In short, masculinity. And if you made a bunch of widows and got a bunch of land, you got virtus for days. The cursus honorum was the established political ladder in Rome. And while military service was not one of the political positions on the ladder, the best way to get elected to any of these positions on the ladder was glorious military service. And being a good general often put your name in the plebeians' heads. Now, doing a big military campaign was a risky move, because you could get bogged down in the classical antiquity equivalent of Viet fucking Nam. But if you achieved great military success, this ladder becomes a fucking sidewalk. You can see it with countless Roman politicians. Leading legions to glorious victories was the best way to reach the top politically. As you'll see later when we discuss Scipio Africanus. In Carthage, however, a man was not defined by skills commanding men on the battlefield, but by wealth. Their empire was built on trade, unlike Rome's, which was built on blood. And political success was determined almost exclusively by wealth. War? I pay others to do that for me. Where Carthage threw mercenaries into the fucking meat grinder, Rome sent those with political ambitions to the front lines. In 264 BC, Rome was rising, as a succession of ambitious young men had slaughtered as many men, women, and children it fucking took to become a mid-level bureaucrat. And Rome really wanted some of these fucking islands. So the Punic War was fought over the islands of Corsica, Sardinia, and Sicily, which Rome got. Great job. And while this may seem like a minor historical footnote, it was the beginning of Carthage's decline and Rome's rise. You see, Carthage was incapable of holding on to... what? Oh, we're not... The Second Punic War was a lot like World War II, in that it is way more fun to talk about than the prequel, which was way too caught up in world building and setting up characters and all that boring bullshit. In 219 BC, Hannibal, Carthaginian general and famous elephant herder, conquered the Iberian city of Saguntum, which was allied with Rome. Naturally, Rome declared war. It was sort of their thing. And Hannibal responded by calmly, rationally, and eloquently taking tens of thousands of soldiers and fucking war elephants to Italy, over the Alps, and threatening the city of Rome directly for the first time in hundreds of fucking years. Roman scholar Mary Beard, who is currently a professor of classics at the University of Cambridge, has said this of Hannibal's famous crossing. Hannibal's crossing of the Alps is simultaneously a monumental achievement of logistics and willpower, while also being totally fucking metal. Did you see that shit? Elephants. In Italy. The fucking madman. He did it. World star. You could also presumably see how Romans could interpret such a move as sneaky and treacherous. But that sounds like some military-grade coping to me. Hannibal went all around the Italian peninsula for over a decade, waging war and fucking with Roman settlements of all kinds. He was just fucking untouchable. Hannibal even inflicted on Rome the greatest defeat they had suffered up to that point. at the Battle of Cannae. As of 2019, around 7,000 U.S. troops have been lost in all post 9/11 wars. 7,000 total. Total U.S. troops at Cannae. Over 50,000 Romans died in one day. But the Romans were feeling pretty good about this next battle. Rome just kept raising legions. And these legions would then go to Hannibal and fucking die instantly every time. Now, a Roman general by the name of Scipio was a far younger man than Hannibal. Hannibal had spent nearly his entire adulthood planning his big war against Rome, but Scipio had spent nearly his whole adulthood suffering from the war. Both his father and uncle were killed by a Carthaginian army led by Hannibal's brother in Spain. But Scipio, in a quick succession of stunning upsets, took Iberia from Carthage. Scipio then returned to Rome. Now, once there, he was elected to consul, basically immediately, and that is the highest political office you could be elected to in the Roman Republic. Scipio then went to the Senate and demanded as many legions as they could muster so he could take them to Africa, burn Carthage to the ground, and wash clean from Rome the stain of dishonor with the blood of the treacherous. They said no. They said no. They said, no, you cannot do that. And in their defense, that is fucking insane. They could probably look outside the windows of the Senate House and see Hannibal default dancing on a burning Roman village. He was still there. He was still inflicting defeat after defeat on the Romans. And Scipio was proposing they take able-bodied, trained up, armed, fighting-age men to Africa and just completely assume that Hannibal will just follow instead of taking Rome. It's a big bet. It's a big bet, and I could see why the Senate were little punk bitches about it. Now, Scipio was determined to be a fucking glorious idiot. And so he went to every rich person he could find and begged for funding to raise an army. His commitment to his insane idea paid off, as he got that army, as well as some more ships, and took the fight to Carthage. Scipio's assumption also turned out to be correct, as Hannibal immediately followed him to Carthage, and then two titans met, as it was written. Keeping their armed men at the same distance, the generals, each attended by one interpreter, met, being not only the greatest of their own age, but equal to any of the kings or commanders of all nations in all history before their time. For a moment they remained silent, looking at each other and almost dumbfounded by mutual admiration. The fate of the Mediterranean was decided on that day, as the forces of Scipio and Hannibal clashed. Two generals who had achieved the impossible. One man forged by the war, the other had masterminded. And on that day, Scipio achieved the impossible again, winning the Second Punic War for Rome. It was this war that made Carthage a shadow. Massive reparations were to be paid, and all their overseas territory was ceded to Rome. They were forbidden to even possess war elephants again, as these beasts had inflicted a deep scar on the Roman psyche. The Carthaginians could no longer wage war without Roman consent, and they were no longer allowed to maintain a sizable navy. Carthage, the successors to an ancient civilization, would never again be the power of the Mediterranean. In the aftermath of the Second Punic War, they became a footnote in another nation's story. The harsh terms of this peace treaty was nearly outright rejected by Carthage's leadership, but Hannibal advocated for it, seeking an end to the conflict which had consumed nearly 2 decades of his own life, and over 300,000 lives in total. This would end up being the height of Scipio's political career, his virtus not holding up to accusations of bribery he would later face as a politician, which seemed to have been completely fabricated by his political rivals. Scipio would retire from political life after this scandal to his villa outside the city, having grown tired of the scheming of politics, his military successes not leading to the career that one would have expected for the one and only Roman that brought war to Carthage's doorstep. Hannibal himself would go on to live in exile, being pursued throughout the Mediterranean by Rome as he was considered an enemy of the Republic. Around 182 BC, Hannibal took his own life, a life that he had devoted to the destruction of Rome, but had instead brought about the destruction of his home. His last words were, "Let us now relieve the Romans of their fears by the death of a feeble old man." Scipio died just a year after that, after demanding that he not be buried in Rome, the city that he had saved. Ungrateful fatherland. You won't even have my bones. The Second Punic War destroyed Scipio, Hannibal, and the lives of hundreds of thousands of men. But the end result was Rome ascending to becoming the greatest power of the Mediterranean, and Carthage becoming just another city-state on the coast. Carthage would no longer threaten Rome, as they went on to what? Bull. There were some who approved the action of the Romans, saying that they had taken wise and statesmanlike measures in the defense of their empire. For to destroy this source of perpetual menace was the act of intelligent and far-seeing men. Others took the opposite view, that far from maintaining the principles by which they had won their supremacy, they were, little by little, deserting it for a lust of domination. As I said, one of the terms of the peace treaty was that Carthage was no longer allowed to wage war without Rome's permission. So, one of Rome's allies, King Massinissa of Numidia, would just continually seize pieces of what little territory Carthage had remaining. Rome was also probably definitely behind these invasions. Not cool. Eventually, Carthage sent an army out against the Numidians because, what the fuck? Are you serious? Carthage ended up losing because they'd become the washed-up drunk ex-high school football star of the Mediterranean. And the anti-Carthage faction in the Roman Senate saw this as the excuse they'd been waiting for.
He's already dead.
Cato the Elder, the senator who had also, by the way, falsely accused Scipio of corruption, would end every speech, and there were a lot, with, "Furthermore, I consider that Carthage must be destroyed." This is what Simon Baker's Ancient Rome, The Rise and Fall of an Empire, had to say on the war-hawkish anti-Carthage faction in Roman politics. Led by Cato the Elder, this side glossed their case with bright rhetorical brushstrokes. The Carthaginians were untrustworthy, degenerate, and effeminate child sacrificers. The Third Punic War can only make sense if you see Carthage as Rome saw Carthage. They signed a treaty, their wealth was gone, so fucking what? They're goddamn schemers, and they're gonna figure something out. They're gonna fire elephants out of a cannon and directly into Roman children! They must be destroyed. A Roman commission sent to inspect Carthage and ensure they were keeping to the terms of their treaty found an abundance of shipbuilding materials and said that Carthage was definitely rebuilding their navy. I can only assume it was probably something more like this.
My God. They figured out a way to grow shipbuilding materials. The low cunning of these filthy Phoenician fucks knows no bounds. I'm gonna do one more because the chickens won't shut the fuck up.
So Rome transported an assload of cavalry and soldiers and ships, and Carthage sent 3 separate envoys to the Romans, each of them begging for peace. And this is how it went.
"Please, sir, we have no wish for war. We'll do anything it takes to prevent it." Well, you understand we don't trust you and your scheming, devious, tricky ways, but the Senate's mind would be put at ease if you gave us 300 hostages, the sons of your richest families.
No, we will not.
Hamilcar, what choice do we have? You will have your hostages, Roman. Excellent. Then you shall have your peace. So, we're not going to war? Oh, of course not, Biggus. Unless they did seem to give up those hostages a bit easily. Those Punic pricks are up to something. So, we noticed you haven't moved your troops and have been landing more? Yes, the Senate demands you give us your finest artillery. What? Hamilcar, we must. If our artillery is the price of peace, I pay it gladly for my son and the children of all of Carthage, as should you, Hamilcar. We shall send you a ship containing all of our artillery. Well, you are a shrewd negotiator, Dickus. Yes, I am. Did they give up that artillery a bit too easily, you think? No. They seem very, very desperate to avoid war. I think they're being sincere. Of course, Bickus. That does make sense. To a Roman. We are a notoriously righteous and peace-loving people, but a Carthaginian. Their lust for domination knows no bounds. I am absolutely positive, Biggus, that a plot is afoot. You received the artillery? Indeed we did. So, why are you still here? The Senate has further demands. What are their demands? I'm going to kill you if this Latin fucker doesn't. Your city, sitting there, on the coast, menacingly. We dislike what coastal living does to people. It gives them a grasping disposition, makes them dream of conquest. So move it. Excuse me? Move your city. We can't move our city. Well, if you refuse to meet our demands, then peace is impossible. We gave you our children, and our artillery. Yes, and don't think I'm not up to your tricks. The children were clearly booby-trapped, so we threw them into the sea.
Surprisingly, this war ended up actually being quite prolonged and difficult. It turned into that classical antiquity Vietnam that I mentioned earlier. The fighting was long, and forces were stretched thin. Until he came. Scipio Aemilianus, the adopted grandson of Scipio Africanus, was hungry for glory and took charge of all Roman forces in Africa after several years into the war. He abandoned fighting in the countryside, which his predecessor had been doing for some fucking reason, I don't know why, and prepared for a prolonged siege of the city itself. But long sieges, they're the best way to take a heavily fortified city. But it's not a very glorious way to win a city now, is it? Scipio the Younger, as we'll refer to him from now on, was 17, and eager to get the approval of the Senate, and did not learn the fucking lesson that his grandfather did, so he launched an all-out assault. He took Carthage by force, burned it into a hollow, blackened husk, then tore that husk to the ground before sowing the fields in the area with salt, so no crops would grow there for generations. Scipio the Younger had a teacher, a Greek teacher named Polybius. He wrote of Scipio the Younger's reaction to the sight of the once ultimate power of the Mediterranean's capital burning before his eyes. It's really humanizing and humbling, and some of these primary sources, they're generally a little theatrical, and you gotta wonder, did this really happen? But at the same time, this is what he said happened. A day will come when sacred Troy shall perish, and Priam and his people shall be slain. Homer, what brings these lines to your mind? Is this the fate of all empires? Is this the fate of Rome?